just this crazy, crazy data that we cooked up about it's just a absolutely lunatic thing. And then we said, well, we're going to analyze this through Black feminist criminology. There's no reason why. I mean, it was Peter's idea, and Peter's reason was, if it has something to do with Black feminism, they can't criticize it. It has to somehow be genius. So now we're talking about looking at dogs humping each other and people reacting to it. And we're going to analyze that through Black feminist criminology to conclude that we should train men the way that we train dogs in order to get rid of rape. And this paper won an award for excellence. I mean, it was the specific parameters of the award were that it was exemplary of what the field should be doing. These people, not only will they publish crazy at the highest level of academic publication, but they think it's good ideas. They think this training men like you train dogs to prevent rape culture is a good idea.
Okay, I'm joined today by James Lindsay, who's a very well-known essayist, author, and speaker. He's the author of a number of books, including How to Have Impossible Conversations, which he co-authored with Peter Boghossian, and the upcoming book, Cynical Theories, How Activist Scholarship Made Everything About Race, Gender, and Identity, and Why This Harms Everybody, which he co-authored with Helen Pluckrose. His essays have appeared in numerous well-known publications, including Time, Scientific American, The Philosopher's Magazine, Ario, and others. He also led the Grievance Studies Probe, which we're definitely going to talk about in a few minutes, and has appeared on the Rogan podcast, Dave Rubin podcast. He spoke with Jordan Peterson, and is just generally a very well-known guy and a very interesting guy. So thanks for appearing on the show.
I'm glad to be here.
I mean, it's hard to even know where to start, really, but something which I really want to dig into, I guess from the get-go, really, is the Grievance Studies Probe, which I just mentioned then.
Right.
Could you kind of just give an outline of what exactly that was and what your aims were in carrying that out? In particular, Sure. kind of setting out what the type of scholarship you were trying to kind of reveal for being slightly fraudulent focused on, and what that general area of scholarship is and what it's called and so on.
Sure. I'll try to be brief with that. It's actually surprisingly complicated.
No need to be brief at all, actually.
The short answer that led us into it is it's scholarship like gender studies that we were actually targeting. But it turns out there are a lot of branches of scholarship that are like gender studies, that study not just gender in terms of how identity is characterized, but also race, sexuality, ability status, body weight status. They are theorizing about how human interactions and things work. So it's almost like something that's not using any data at all, pretending to be sociology is really what these things are.
It's like the type of area of study out of which came the things which loads of people who might not be that embedded in the academic literature will still have heard of, things like white privilege or...
Yes, white privilege. Diversity, equity, and inclusion are big ones now. And all of this stuff kind of either came out of that or stands on the foundation that was laid by this scholarship that we were targeting. So generally, it's a bunch of things called something studies or critical studies of something or critical blah, blah, blah theory, something like that. And there are lots and lots and lots of these that all kind of fall under this umbrella that we ended up looking at after starting with gender studies. So what we did in the Grievance Studies affair was we planned to write for about a year, seeing how fate would treat us. And we were going to write as many academic papers in a year as we could, targeting high profile journals as a first priority, and then going to lower profile journals as a secondary, fallback measure with those papers. So those papers were meant to be hoaxes in the beginning, where we didn't do any research whatsoever. We just wrote absolutely absurd things and tried to check to see if the people in those journals have any idea at all of what they're talking about. And we thought that they didn't. It was actually the very last week of November, we were already admitting. So just from August to November was hoaxing, and we admitted hoaxes aren't going to work. We have to do something different. So the project became at that point about, can we learn to replicate their scholarship while intentionally adding elements that make it more absurd? an academic paper is the gold standard of the research side of your job when you're a professor. And usually in the humanities, somewhere between, depending on the institution, depending on your record, depending on what else you're doing, it varies, but anywhere between maybe 6 and 10 academic papers over the course of 6 to 7 years is going to be enough to qualify you for your research component for tenure at many universities. And of course, we were just making them up. And I ended up having 7, which would be enough in many humanities departments to qualify for tenure. We had 7 of them accepted for publication, including a couple of them in very prominent journals. Hypatia, the leading journal of feminist philosophy; Sex Roles, which is a high-ranked interdisciplinary journal that talks about, obviously, sex roles. So again, that's where your toxic masculinity and, is this a gendered behavior? These kinds of phrases are going to come up. Yeah. So this was what we did. And we won an award for one of our papers, which was probably the most asinine of the papers we wrote. As a matter of fact, in that diary I mentioned, I was reading through, and when we finally in November realized this is a catastrophe, this isn't going to work. We have to change our goals completely, which I'll talk about the goals in just a second. We basically have to scrap every paper we've written or rewrite them from the ground up. There's no chance for any of them. There's just one that happens to be out there already, but it's way too crazy to have any chance. And it turns out that it's the one that won an award for excellence in scholarship. It's the famous dog humping paper.
Yeah. So can you, what did that paper say? Because it's just unbelievable that has not only got into academic journals, actually been given an award. So could you just explain what it said?
Yeah. So the dog humping paper, in very brief, was so we started all of our papers, I'll say it this way, with the thing we wanted to argue in mind, and then just trying to make it work to get there. So we started with our conclusion, which of course is backwards.
Yeah.
And that's going to lead into, what our goals were. If you can do that, there's obviously a problem. So we started with our conclusion, and the conclusion we wanted to get to was that it is a feminist priority to train men the way that we train dogs.
Yeah.
And so it's already absurd. And I had pitched that paper to Peter because he has dogs. I actually don't have any dogs. And he lives in a city. And I said, Pete, you go to the dog park every day. Go gather some field evidence from the dog park and write about your experience at the dog park. And we'll turn. And so he wrote this just absolutely lunatic manuscript, his first draft of this thing, and he sent it to me. And it's talking about dogs like going to the bathroom on each other. It's talking about dogs humping each other and dogs going to the bathroom in the water bowl and all of this insane stuff. And then the goal was, though, to analyze the idea that humans watching dogs have sex with each other in dog parks, which can constitute a kind of canine rape, has implications about human rape, and in particular, the culture that supports human rape, which they call rape culture. And so the idea was that there's a canine rape culture at the dog park that has something to do with the dogs, but it's more to do with the people watching the dogs rape each other, and that this is insightful about human rape culture and human attitudes about rape. And that, of course, we just cooked up a bunch of fake impossible data, like that we examined 10,000 dogs and their genitals. So then we collect all this data where essentially, dogs rape each other. We make a note about it, and we note how the people behave. And we said, well, men encouraged their male dogs to rape female dogs, but they freaked out if their male dogs raped another male dog. And they were very vicious about the treatment of their dogs if they did gay rape. But if they did straight rape, they were encouraging of it. And just this crazy, crazy data that we cooked up about it's just a absolutely lunatic thing. And then we said, well, we're going to analyze this through Black feminist criminology. There's no reason why. It was Peter's idea, and Peter's reason was, if it has something to do with Black feminism, they can't criticize it. It has to somehow be genius. So now we're talking about looking at dogs humping each other and people reacting to it, and we're going to analyze that through Black feminist criminology to conclude that we should train men the way that we train dogs in order to get rid of rape. And this paper won an award for excellence. I mean, it was the specific parameters of the award were that it was exemplary of what the field should be doing.
Oh my God.
Yeah, so the journal was in its 25th year, so it's not like it's actually a big journal within the small pond of feminist geography. It is the biggest journal in feminist geography. And they're in their 25th year, so it's an established thing that's been going on, obviously now 26 or 7 years. And they were having their 25th anniversary celebration. And to do so, they were highlighting one paper per issue of the journal that year to say, this is what our field is about. This is what it needs to be doing going forward. And our paper was selected as one of the examples.
Oh man, that is absolutely crazy.
So this tells you what our goal was. Our goal was to show that these journals will publish things that are absolutely crazy because they think they're good ideas.
Yeah.
And a lot of people have missed that because we did start off hoaxing, and a lot of people ran with the idea of hoaxes. We actually, nobody really knows this. We put out a press kit when we came out with the project. We sent it to hundreds, literally hundreds of journalists, telling them what we had done. And in the press kit, we explicitly said, this is not hoaxes. Please don't call it hoaxes. It started as hoaxes. Hoaxes failed. We did something different. And then every journalist in the universe wrote hoaxes. Yeah. And so it was like, great, awesome. So what our goal at first was, of course, to hoax them, which is to say that our goal was to show that they don't know what they're talking about. And then I said in November, we realized that they do know what they're talking about. They actually believe the crazy that they're writing. So the goal switched at that point to understanding that craziness ourselves and showing the public that, yes, indeed, these people, not only will they publish crazy at the highest level of academic publication, but they think it's good ideas. They think this training men like you train dogs to prevent rape culture is a good idea.
Yeah. So basically the point is it shows it's not only just ridiculous in and of itself that can get into one publication, but it also just shines a light on the complete fraudulence of the entire discipline, essentially. Because once that's been published in an academic paper, it's entered the realm of something which can then be cited by someone else, and that gives that person's work legitimacy as well. And then papers can pick up on it, and commentators pick up on it and back up their points by citing that paper, when actually everything about the paper is deliberately nonsensical and basically just rubbish, but it's been given legitimacy by these people who are kind of the gateholders of legitimacy. So it's just so revealing about the state of that form of academia, really.
Yes, exactly. A lot of people focused on peer review, and a lot of people said, and I even got somebody saying it to us the other day. Literally just the other day, somebody said, well, the peer reviewers probably didn't even read the paper. They're just asleep at the wheel. And our point is not that. They definitely read the papers. They wrote us back thousands and thousands of words talking about our papers in detail. They very clearly read them. They very clearly understood what we said. The problem isn't that peer review failed. It's that the field itself believes crazy ideas and thinks they're good. And they proved that fact by endorsing the papers. So then the usual criticism, and somebody brought this one up with us in an actual academic paper the other day, is that apparently that's no problem, that they believe crazy ideas. Like, so what? People are allowed to believe crazy ideas. And it's like, how do you not think that believing crazy ideas and publishing them in academic literature, when these people are then cited as race scholars or gender scholars or whatever it happens to be, how do you not think that that's a problem? But that's where we are. I mean, that's what we aim to show anyway, is that the people in the fields actually believe crazy ideas.
Yeah, it's actually it's almost quite stressful to think about, because it's so obvious that what's going on is that some of the most important people in terms of determining basically societal discourse at the moment and the nature of so much of our politics and stuff are just fraudulent, and some of them aren't even conscious of the fact that they're enthralled to these ideas which make no sense at all. They might even think that they make sense, but it's just basically by any basic standard of academic rigor which should be applied, it just doesn't meet the necessary criteria. But it's still so central to what's going on in terms of the debate and discussion. I really want to get onto that, but just give me some other quick examples of some of the things, because it's actually it's hilarious, but it's also honestly quite terrifying, some of the things that you're able to get into publications. It's
Yeah,
like one
because
about like it's like one
what you
about
just said is super important too. So definitely. So the papers that were accepted include the dog humping paper.
yeah.
There was one about that if there would be less transphobia if straight men would practice putting things in their butts, because then they would be less uncomfortable with the idea that their girlfriend has a penis.
Didn't you do one on like it was like being able to you're not allowed to mock social justice. You're not
Yes, that
allowed
was
to.
actually accepted by Hypatia. There was a paper that we wrote that was that any humor that's satirical, in particular, that mocks social justice is wrong, and that criticizing social justice in general is morally untenable. But any kind of humor that you want to use to push social justice, like if you want to make fun of white people, for example, that's okay. But you can't make fun of social justice. That's absolutely wrong.
I mean, what that shows though also, I mean, it's like, it's so ridiculous, but everyone kind of has anyone who's got any sense of what's going on is aware that there's that impulse on the social justice left, let's call it at the moment. But you got that properly published and it's been given complete academic legitimacy through that process. But what it is essentially is just a really, really openly censorious argument that that ideology is just completely shielded from any criticism or any humor related to it. But any form of attack on anyone else basically is completely legitimate, and that's been just instantly legitimized by the people who are meant to be seeking social justice. It's such a strange situation to be in, and it's still ongoing now. Like, it's not like it's changed since you wrote that. That's still the case in university.
It's still the case, yeah, definitely.
And you wrote one about Mein Kampf, didn't you?
That's what I was about to say is, maybe I don't know that it really was. I mean, I think the paper we just talked about, that you can't make fun of it paper, which we called When the Joke's on You, and then they accepted. So had some good times with that. But maybe the biggest coup that we had as far as the public reception is that we rewrote a chapter of Hitler's Mein Kampf as intersectional feminism, which was accepted by a feminist social work journal.
Oh my, it's actually just unbelievable.